Working Class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is The Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Trump was asked today, will you go peacefully? When you lose, or it was posed, if you lose, will you go peacefully? Will there be a peaceful transition of power? And what do you think he said? And it's one of those questions where you know what the answer is going to be before you ask it, which is why you continually ask it. And his answer, well, you know, we'll see. We'll see. You know, the ballots, they're horrible. The ballots are disaster. Ballots are a disaster. And what's interesting to me is, you know, the more I've been looking at this, the more he should be pushing for mail-in ballots and expanding opportunities for people to vote, his supporters to vote, because his supporters are the ones who are, well, the ones dying off from the virus that he's done a horrible job of containing. You would think that, you know, if your base is a bunch of angry old white people, that you'd want to make sure that they don't die. Just kind of throwing that out there. But no, that's not it. He's going to push on. And what's interesting is, and maybe it's a winning strategy after all, because they're going to contest every mail-in ballot. They're going to contest every, you know, you think hanging Chads was bad back in 2000? Oh, just wait. And if you remember last week, the Pennsylvania State Supreme Court ruled, while expanding our ability to get the mail-in ballot, and, you know, giving a couple of days, as long as it's postmarked, to get counted. They also did throw in there that ballots can be thrown out if they're not in the secrecy envelope. You got to have that inner envelope so that when whoever opens it can't see who you voted for. It's supposed to be secret. And this is one of those things where we don't follow directions really well as a country. So this could be, and, you know, there are people who are really worried about this. This could be one of the ways that Trump wins Pennsylvania. Because, you know, as I've been saying for a while, Pennsylvania is the Keystone State in this election. You look at what they said over at the 538 blog. If Biden wins Pennsylvania, 96% chance of becoming president. If Trump wins Pennsylvania, well over, I think 86, 88% chance of being president. So Pennsylvania is an incredibly important state. And if you don't think the Trump team is going to have, you know, armies of lawyers contesting every ballot, every provisional ballot, well, you're insane. Because they are most certainly going to do it. Because remember, Trump only won Pennsylvania by about 44,000 votes. That's like a margin of error kind of thing. And if they can chuck out a bunch of ballots, it's going to be better for them. This is one of these moments where Pennsylvania could be the new Florida. The train wreck could happen here. Now, interestingly enough, in Texas, Texas is having a rise in the number of people contracting the coronavirus. So their governor, a Republican who I'm never been fond of, wants to expand early in-person voting, which, look, you know, I'm not against. I think it's a great idea. Open it up, let people go, and so they don't have to stand in lines and they don't have to be around a lot of other people. Expand it, open it up, give people more chance to, if you're not going to do the mail-in, to vote in person. Well, get this. This is the part where you go, this is a very Trumpian thing to do. The Republican governor has expanded this, and yep, we want people to vote. We're going to make sure that people don't get sick because it's a health crisis. We don't want to do this. The Republican Party of Texas and a number of Republican officials have filed a lawsuit against their Republican governor for expanding the right of people to vote. And I've been saying for a long time, Republicans don't want you to vote. They want to, as Paul Weyrich said back in 1980, we don't want everyone to vote. Elections are not won by the majority. We want our people to get out, and we want to suppress them. And this goes against everything that Republicans stand for, which is, you know, limiting the number of people who are allowed to vote. We want to go back to the good old days, the original intentists, of only white landowning males. None of those non-landowning white males. No, just landowners. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Texas Supreme Court rules on this, because it's which way do you go? It's the Republican Party finally eating themselves. It's a governor doing what's in the best interest of his state, and good on him for doing it. And the party elites saying, no, we're okay with people dying, just as long as they don't get to vote. Interesting times in which we live in. And speaking of interesting times, Trump has evidently announced his intention to nominate for National Security Council, for Inspector General of the intelligence community, this Alan Souza. Alan, evidently, was a former aide to whom? Devin Nunes, the Kremlin gremlin. And you go, could you possibly pick anybody worse for that position? Can you possibly pick a bigger yes man? And the answer is no. Because look, at the end of this, if it weren't for the Inspector General, who at the time was a guy named Michael Atkinson, had it been not for Atkinson, there probably wouldn't have been an impeachment, because, as you know, Trump was impeached because Atkinson moved the whistleblower complaint along and didn't quash it at his level, and it turned into an impeachment. So Trump was impeached because of Michael Atkinson, who was then subsequently fired and now going to be replaced, that's right, by Devin Nunes' right-hand man, and, Trump apologist, Alan Souza. And are you surprised by it? The answer is no. This is what Dear Leader does. This is what fascistic kind of leaders do. Not surprising whatsoever. And here's the thing: I would have been surprised if he would have nominated Devin's cow or Devin's mom, one or the other, because those are my two of my favorite Twitter accounts. Maybe one of them. Maybe that would have been the way to go. But it's just sad, especially today. Today, I don't know if you saw the photographs and the images coming from Washington, D.C. There were some incredible images of former law clerks and staffers at the Supreme Court who were lining the Supreme Court steps. And I mean, it was really, some of the images I saw were really moving and powerful. And it was one of those things where, you go, on this day, can we honor the woman who was, I think one of the greatest Supreme Court justices ever? Can we just have that moment to reflect on her life, mourn her passing, and give her the respect that she deserves? No, we can't, because look, the U.S. Senate wanted to pass a resolution. They wanted to pass a resolution honoring the life of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and Ted Cruz, the guy with the most punchable face in the Senate, blocked it. And you go, this is where we are. Welcome to Donald Trump land. We can't even agree. This is the bizarre thing in all this. Can't even agree to honor the life of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. It's just sad stuff. Now the big story of the day, and I got to tell you, I can't figure this one out. You look at what happened in Kentucky with Breonna Taylor, a woman who was gunned down in her own apartment. Not only gunned down in her own apartment, as she was struggling for life, they didn't even bother doing CPR or calling an ambulance. They did nothing to help her. Of the three people who fired shots, and they fired something like 20 shots at this woman in her bed, two of the police officers walked off scot-free. The other one was charged with, and I'm trying to figure out what the heck it means. Like I said, the two were let go. The other one was charged with some kind of I don't even know how to wanton endangerment. What is that? What is wanton endangerment? Now, I guess from what the reporting on it has been, it's you fired shots blindly into the apartment. So it's kind of, is it a misdemeanor? Is it a felony? Uh, it's, I know it's not manslaughter. I know it's not murder. I know it's not anything related to this woman being murdered in her own bed. It's kind of like we had to charge him with something, so we'll make it a parking offense. And the thing that caught my attention, and look, outside of the fact that, sorry, this just isn't enough. It was a mistake. I'm sorry, isn't enough. That's not an excuse. Oh, oops, we went to the wrong house. Oops, we kicked in the wrong door and we shot the wrong person in their bed. Oops, sorry, that doesn't do it for me. And look, I usually try to look at the police officer's view of this. I usually put myself in their shoes and go, how would I react? And I'm one of the people who believes I'd rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6. So I give them a little more deference than maybe I probably should. But in this case, the woman was literally in her bed. Sorry, I don't know that that's a real threat. And the thing that caught my attention is while the two other cops who fired shots, I guess their shots didn't go into the apartment, maybe went through the window. I don't know. I don't know why you don't charge them with wanton endangerment. But the guy who they did charge with 3 counts of this wanton endangerment, the bond was set at $15,000. Stop and think about that for a second. 15 grand for taking a woman's life. Now, you go, well, maybe that sounds like reasonable bail, Rick. Sounds reasonable, because who's got 15 grand laying around? In Lancaster, just down the road from where I'm sitting, there was a protest after someone was shot here. And look, the shooting that was here, and unfortunate as it was, I personally side with the cop. I would have shot the guy too. Somebody's running at you with a knife above their head about to stab you. Sorry, something's got to give. I'm taking that shot. And attack me if you have to, but it is what it is. But they had protests in the streets, and there was some damage done, and they arrested a couple of people who they held on $1 million bond. For a little graffiti and maybe a broken window, you're going to hold someone on $1 million? Yet someone who fired shots into someone's apartment and killed them gets out with 15 grand. And you're going to tell me that we don't have some kind of imbalance in our justice system? That there's not something seriously, seriously wrong? You wonder. You wonder why there are so many people in the streets, and you wonder why the stories that you hear from people in their dealings with the police, especially people who live in predominantly African American neighborhoods, don't see the police as the helpers. And I'll tell you, in my experience, and I grew up, as I've said a million times, I grew up in a housing project on the west side of Cleveland. I was the minority kid in a minority neighborhood, and we never called the police because they didn't help. They were usually there to mop up. They were usually there to make things worse, but they weren't there to call for protection. And I keep hearing people saying, "Well, I don't think you understand the African American community, Rick. They want more policemen." No, they don't. They want people who are going to stop the crime. They want people who are going to solve some of the problems. They want jobs. They want infrastructure. They want a lot of things. But you got to wonder, do we want more of this? Do we want more of these moments where someone is literally murdered in their bed and the family gets $12 million and can never talk about it? A little hush money. Sorry, your daughter, your sister, your mother. Sorry, they're gone. Here's a little money. Shh. I don't know. I'm not there. And this is where I do believe there needs to be a commission to look into these things. And I do believe that there need to be ways to hold these people accountable. If you pull that trigger, that enormous power that you have of pulling that trigger, you damn well better be right. And I know, because I've had this thrown at me. Well, what would you do? And I'll tell you, I think I would make sure that it was the right address. And maybe we need to be talking about how our police departments are being trained and how they enter into people's homes in these moments. Because look, this isn't the first time we've heard of this. This isn't the first time we've heard of, the cops kicking in the wrong door and shooting somebody who was reaching for the remote control. Not the first time. And I guarantee not going to be the last. But the question is how are we going to deal with it in the future? Look, I don't want to put any more stress or pressure on our police than you have to. But if you give someone this kind of enormous power, you give them this incredible authority over the rest of us and the ability to take a life. Don't you think they need to be held to a higher standard? Don't you think that, if you're going to pull that gun and you're going to shoot that person in their bed, they better damn well be right? So look, I look at the people who are in the streets in Kentucky tonight, and my heart and soul goes out to them. Because this isn't justice. This is not justice. And I got to think that there are a lot of policemen out there going, yeah, we've to get our good name back. We've got to hold us accountable. We've got to hold ourselves accountable, hold ourselves to a higher standard. Look, I respect our police departments. I respect the people who put on the uniform. But you got to hold them accountable for the actions. And this, I'm sorry, wanton endangerment? I saw that and I'm like, I have no idea what the hell that means. And does it come with any consequence, or does it come with a gift prize? Sad stuff. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, our good friend Kareem Pennebaker is going to be here to share some thoughts on the outcome. Right back.
More American than workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On the Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1935. That was the day the United Rubber Workers Union was founded in Akron, Ohio. Akron was the rubber capital of the world. All the major companies were there: Goodyear, Firestone, Goodrich, and General Tire. In Akron alone, there were more than 40,000 rubber workers and thousands more throughout the country. After 30 years of struggling to build the union, hopes of organizing the industry were finally made real. The founding of the International came after a successful strike the year before. But the union was born amid growing tensions within the AFL. These were the years of industrial organizing that rivaled the exclusive skilled craft unions. Growing demands to organize the mass industries would explode the next month at the historic AFL convention in Atlantic City. The tensions between AFL leaders and rubber workers delegates gave a taste of things to come. At the founding convention, rubber workers delegates opposed a number of AFL leaders' demands. The AFL insisted on appointing officers. They threatened to withdraw financial assistance when the delegates demanded democratic elections. But AFL leaders backed off when unionists from across the city protested. Then, delegates voted down an AFL constitutional clause proposal to bar communists from the union. They also refused AFL orders to organize on anything less than a total industry basis. Organizing skilled workers into the United Rubber Workers became a contentious issue at the October AFL convention. It led to the fistfight between Carpenters leader Bill Hutchison and Mine Workers president John Lewis, which precipitated the AFL split. By the following spring, the new United Rubber Workers Union would lead another successful strike that put it firmly among the industrial unions of the CIO.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Like I said, I don't even know what wanton endangerment is, and is it really is it something to worry about being convicted of? Are you going to end up in jail? Will there be fines? Something? I guess I'm struggling with this. I understand manslaughter. I understand, involuntary manslaughter. Oops, I made a mistake. I understand that stuff. I don't understand and don't know what wanton endangerment is. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on maybe my next guest knows what wanton endangerment is. I've asked our good friend Currie Pennebaker to come talk with us. Currie is the the treasurer of the DNC's Black Caucus. Currie, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, brother. Thanks for having me on again.
So it seems like we have these conversations too frequently. Any idea what wanton endangerment is? Does it come with jail time? Does it come with a fine, slap on the wrist, something?
I'm not sure. I'm not a lawyer, but what I do know is that they placed more value on the building than they did on Breonna Taylor's life. The three men who actually shot and killed her weren't charged at all. The officer that was charged was essentially charged because he fired into adjacent apartments. So they're basically saying because his aim wasn't good, that he should be convicted, but because the other officers hit her 6 times, I guess that's cool. I mean, that's essentially what they're saying to me.
Wow.
They ultimately are saying overall is that her life didn't matter to them at all, and that those officers are above the law.
I mean, how do you justify that? I mean, I'm struggling with a couple of things in this story. One, the fact that the woman was in her bed, right?
Yeah, she was in her bed. I mean, it's 12 o'clock in the morning. I mean, and the funny thing about this, well, I would call it ironic, not funny, is that they got a no-knock warrant, but yet are claiming that they announced themselves and they did not. It just simply doesn't make sense. To me, this smacks of a pure cover-up. And is another shiny example of why we desperately need police reform.
Yeah, I'm looking at this and I'm just going, there's nothing in this that smells right. And
No.
How did they end up at her apartment, considering she wasn't a criminal?
No, so they were after someone else. It was, I believe, her ex-boyfriend, who was already in custody, by the way. They then went to try to get the ex-boyfriend, after they shot and killed her, to say that she was involved in crimes too, and he wouldn't do it. They were trying to cover this up from Jump Street because they knew they had made a mistake, and they killed an innocent black woman who was only 26 years old in her own home. You also don't see the NRA coming out saying, this is wrong and these jackbooted thugs should be held accountable. None of that's happening because it's a bunch of lies that they spew about this nonsense about having a gun in your home is going to keep you safe. It clearly did because the boyfriend shot back. She still was shot and killed. There's no reason on earth those officers should have been there. Breonna Taylor should still be alive today.
Yeah, I mean, one of the other things that caught my attention is, I guess the guy they did charge, and I said this a minute ago, they let out on $15,000 bond. I'm going $15,000.
Right.
Just down the street from where I'm at, the protest of a shooting of someone here in this area, some protesters got arrested for vandalism and stuff. They're being held on $1 million.
Right.
I see an imbalance here. I see a problem here. I see something wrong with our justice system.
It absolutely is. I mean, and today marks 65 years since the Emmett Till killers were set free. And it is a stark reminder about how things have not changed enough. But where you go from murdering an innocent 14-year-old boy, and those killers got off, to not even convicting and not even charging the people after 150-plus days of those who killed Breonna Taylor. This is flat out wrong. There's no way you can justify this, and this is why people are angry right now. Black folks don't feel safe in our own country. We are demanding that we have police reforms, which also, by the way, not only keeps communities safe, but it keeps officers safe. In no other industry, no other line of work would this excuse work. We would never cover up these kind of blatant mistakes. You wouldn't let a pilot behave the way that some of these officers do. You wouldn't let a doctor, a lawyer, anybody. But yet, because they're a police officer, they get away with it. I get that being a cop is a difficult job, but they signed up for this. They weren't drafted into the police force, and there is no such thing as a blue light. Nothing is like this. That's simply not real. These folks should be beholden to us, not that imaginary blue line.
What do you say to the people who go, neighborhoods who are, high crime neighborhoods, and they always bring up Chicago. And I get this a lot, that African-American communities want not less police, they want more. I've seen a lot of conservative, black conservative commentators saying this. They want more cops on the street. They want to be safer. Do you find that to be true in your experience? Because I'll tell you, in my experience, I think it's the exact opposite. When I was a kid growing up in the projects, we never called the cops because they were never helpful. But I'm curious your thoughts.
So I can't speak for every community, but what I can say is that I do count on the cops to keep my family and myself safe, given all the harassment and death threats that I get. But that doesn't mean that an officer should be the first person responding to every call. That is part of police reform that we're calling for, in that if it's a mental health care crisis, it should not be an officer that responds. I mean, just a few weeks ago, a young man, I believe he was like 13 or 14, was having a mental health care crisis, and the police showed up and shot and killed him. So that's the kind of stuff we're talking about, in addition to this kind of reckless behavior where you're shooting into a place you can't even see the people you're shooting at. It is simply wrong. I think that communities want to be safe, but they also want to have a working relationship with those who are tasked with keeping that community safe. It shouldn't be this overhanded thing. The relationship that currently exists right now is one that is untenable. We should have community policing where the police officers know the people that they're working with, know the people that they're policing and keeping safe, but that's not what's happening. We have this narrative now of this, from Trump about, we need to be tough on crime and all this other stuff, while on one hand, sure, we don't want criminals on our street, but we also don't want the police acting like the criminals and then getting away with it either. We don't want either of those things.
What do you say to the people? And this has been kind of a, now we're into two separate camps. Either you're with the police or you're against them. There doesn't seem to be any middle ground. And I'm someone who wants to find middle ground, because I'm with you. We do need we need to have cops on the street. We do need to have police to keep our neighborhoods safe. But I'm also just, there's no way you can condone the kind of behavior that we've seen in way too many cases. Is there middle ground in this? I mean, is there a way to depoliticize this to where we actually have a real conversation on how we do some policing and how we keep communities safe and how we don't have policemen, kneeling on someone's neck for, nearly 10 minutes or shooting somebody in their bed?
There should be a middle ground. Unfortunately, those who are in positions of power are stoking the flames of hate and anger. When you're in bed with the NRA, the only thing you can sell is fear. And that is exactly what Donald Trump has done, is made people believe that it's a either or proposition, where you have to either be for the police or you're against them. He doesn't allow for any kind of nuance. And that's the ironic thing about this, is where people are so pro-police until they're the ones that are the victim of police brutality. When it happens to them, then it's bad. But when it happens to us, it's like, well, you shouldn't have been breaking the law. Well, I mean, it can't be like that. There should be some reasonable people who are able to take the lead on these things and calm the community down, so that these kinds of issues are not only addressed on the front end, but we have transformational policies put in place so they don't continue to happen. Donald Trump is, in my mind, condoning these kinds of behaviors. He's not out there talking about how these officers shouldn't be behaving this way. He just wants to get people to be afraid and be on his side, and he doesn't care what he's got to say or what he has to do to get that to happen.
No.
But in the middle of all that, the rest of us, even those on the other side, are the ones that are paying the price of this. And it doesn't have to be like that.
No, in fact, I would argue Trump is doing everything he can do to inflame the rhetoric and to use these moments to his advantage, to scare the hell out of Whitey. Because every time we see the protests flare up, every time we see people, rightly so in my view, expressing their anger, that becomes part of his campaign material.
Absolutely, and it is something that, again, it doesn't have to be like this. And we always quote that line from Dr. King's speech where he said a riot is the language of the unheard. In that same paragraph, he goes on to talk about how you solve riots and things like that. It is by social justice and progress that are the guarantors of preventing riots. If you want to stop these kinds of things, then you need to stop police behavior. You need to make sure that police unions, just like you, I support unions, but they cannot behave the way that they do. They are resisting change. They are cloaking themselves amongst each other and forgetting who they actually work for. To me, it's almost like they're behaving like a gang. Like they only want to protect themselves at the expense of the rest of us. And when you have a feckless leader like Donald Trump who can't see beyond his own power grab, that's how you get this stuff to happen,
Right.
especially at the volume that it's happening. He makes it infinitely worse. Instead of being the calming person that we need to try to get the level of tension to decrease, he's out there making it absolutely worse.
So do you see, we hope Joe Biden's elected in November. Do you see a Biden presidency as something that would help bring this back, bring us somewhere towards middle ground, common ground? Because here's the part that I'm struggling with. I'm talking with corrections officers. I'm talking with police officers, and they are dead set against Biden because Biden's with the Black Lives Matter people, and they hate cops, and they want to defend us, and they want to make us weak. And this is the rhetoric that's being thrown around. And I'm curious, how we pull back from this polarized situation, because it's not good for, like you said, it's not good for any of us.
No, it's not. And the reason I think that, for a number of reasons, that Joe Biden would be a phenomenal president, but one of the main things that Joe Biden embodies is empathy. When Breonna's family is struggling with the loss of their daughter, the murder of their daughter, the same way that George Floyd's family is struggling with the murder of their loved one, he understands that kind of pain and can speak to that kind of pain, but also can speak to what is a reasonable approach to addressing this problem instead of trying to make people more afraid and want to solidify this idea that you have to be with the police or you're against them. If you take that approach, it prevents you from finding solutions when there are problems. There is no industry on the planet that is fault-free. The only way you can address mistakes is when you identify them. You speak on them. Those folks don't even want to talk about police violence. They act like it doesn't exist when it is clear that it does. That's why I believe that Joe Biden is the best choice to be our next president. He's got a plan to address police violence. He's got a plan to help our communities. And he understands, again, what it's like to speak to America's collective pain. And that's something we have not had for the last 4 years.
No, you're absolutely right. As I said a minute ago, the thing that struck me is, this officer or ex-officer was charged with this wanton endangerment and released on $15,000 bond, whereas we have these protesters who were arrested down in Lancaster, held on $1 million bond.
Right.
I look at what the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, is doing, and the language he used the other day about, how we're going to go after those protesters and how we're going to, there'll be no violence or that stuff in our neighborhood because the law will come raining down like a ton of bricks, was I think his statement. I don't know how helpful that kind of rhetoric is, and I think it polarizes us even further. I'm curious your thoughts on the idea that we need to have laws in place to rain down on people like a ton of bricks.
It's not helpful at all because if you think about it in this context, I don't actually want to be afraid of the police. I mean, I understand that law is supposed to be the deterrent to the crime. I understand that, but those who are supposed to execute the law and keep us safe aren't the ones we should be afraid of. Those are the ones that are supposed to help us, not hurt us. And it's the opposite. Now, again, there are far more good cops than bad cops. But it is incumbent upon those good cops to start calling out the bad ones because when you don't do that, it makes them all unsafe. It puts them in harm's way. It puts them in a position where they might have to cover up for their buddy in blue instead of doing the right thing. I don't care if you wear a uniform or if you're in the street, you commit a crime, you're a criminal. Doesn't matter what your job application is or what your name or rank might be. Those folks simply don't care about public safety. They're more interested in the blue line and not us. And this idea that Black Lives Matter hates cops is asinine. It's not real. It's just a part of this narrative of how we keep each other separate and keep this mantra going that you have to either be pro-police or you're anti-police. That is simply not true.
Right, but they always come up with the one.
Elected,
they always come out with that one person who says something really stupid, and they, it's magnified and it gets into the echo chamber, and then that becomes the message for the movement. That's not new. That's been going on for since the beginning of time. But it just seems like now in the era of social media, now this instant media, it's become a little bit more powerful.
It absolutely has. But there again, though, I mean, you take there's something different between someone who is an activist and out protesting against police violence, saying something even in the heat of the moment may be stupid. That is different than when the president or a governor says it or an attorney general says it. Those folks have a platform and have power, can actually do something.
Yeah.
While a protester can't. A protester is just screaming for change. While those in elected office like DeSantis and Trump and that attorney general down in Tennessee or in Kentucky, they don't care about the pain that black folks are going through. People want police to do better. Police should want police to do better. But when you have elected officials who ignore the problem, they want to whitewash this. They want to sanitize this and make it go away because they're counting on votes. We want to count people's lives. We want more people to be alive and be safe and not be afraid when you drive by a police officer. That should not be the dynamic that we have in our society.
Yeah, I'm
We're
right there with
supposed
you.
to be the greatest country on earth.
Yep.
We need to start acting like it.
I'm right there with you. Kari, as always, I appreciate the time. Good stuff. Thanks so much. I hope we talk on better terms next time.
I hope so, brother. Anytime you want to have me on, I'm happy.
Thanks so much. Our good friend, Kari Pennebaker. Sad stuff. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1906. That was the day that Dr. Harriet Louise Hardy was born in Arlington, Massachusetts. She pursued a career in medicine, driven by personal family tragedy. She lost her father to pneumonia when she was only 4 years old. She also lost a baby brother to the 1918 influenza outbreak. Dr. Hardy became an early leader in the field of occupational medicine. She was also the first woman to become a full professor at Harvard Medical School. Dr. Hardy began her career in occupational medicine when she began to investigate the causes of illness among workers making fluorescent lights in factories north of Boston. Many of these workers were women. Dr. Hardy researched the cases of berylliosis in Lynn and Salem, Massachusetts. The metal beryllium is used in the making of the lights. Inhaling dust or fumes of the metal can be deadly, but symptoms often do not begin to show up until years after exposure. Symptoms include shortness of breath, coughing, and scarred lungs. Dr. Hardy developed the National Beryllium Registry. It was one of the first registries of its kind to track the impact of a chronic health disorder. Her research helped lead to safety measures in the handling of this dangerous metal. Dr. Hardy also worked with unions, including the Oil, Chemical, and Atomic Workers Union and the United Mine Workers, to identify and address workplace health hazards. These included substances like lead, mercury, anthrax, and asbestos. She wrote a textbook on the subject of industrial toxicology with another pioneer in the field of occupational health, Dr. Alice Hamilton. Dr. Hardy helped to forge new ground in making job sites more safe and healthy for workers.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I guess I'm struggling with the latest Trump frame. The idea that, Joe Biden's a seasoned debater and that, he's a quality debater. And I'm going, hold on, wait a second. I thought you said he was Sleepy Joe. I thought you said he was senile and demented. So which is it, Donnie? Is it that he's a seasoned debater and trying to raise the bar? Or is it that he's Sleepy Joe and demented? I'm still trying to, but I'll tell you, this is very Trump. It's one of the most Trump things ever. Around every issue, every moment, on every side, and taking no real position. And always about making himself look better. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on, just how crazy some of these rallies have gotten. And like I said the other day, I watched him ramble on and babble, for like 10 minutes about how the virus only kills old people and the weak. And people cheered it. I've asked our good friend Phil Glover to come talk with us. Phil is the National Vice President of AFGE District 3. Phil, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks, Rick. I appreciate it.
So, I see, like you, I think I've been watching these rallies for too long. I'm watching the time he says, I don't worry about getting sick because all those people are way over there. All those unwashed masses. And now this latest one of, I don't really care because, it's just the old and the weak. It's just people like you and me, Phil.
Well, it's almost worse than that. I mean, the one day he said, he basically said, this doesn't affect anybody.
Right.
Well, 200,000 some people are dead. Certainly their families are affected. I mean, just even that world, let's just go there. He has no empathy for anything. And what shocked me the other day, I guess more than anything, is I'm from Western PA and I know some of those folks out there. I'm sure I've been around some of those folks, and they cheer. They cheer for these lines that he does, talking about a member of Congress like, just disgusting, and they just cheer, and it's hard to understand. And I don't know, Rick, it's just a rough time to be in a labor union.
Yeah, well, but here's the weird thing is, I've been talking to a lot of union members over the last several days, and a lot of the people I'm talking are big into the Trump train. In fact, they're defiantly so, to the point to where they don't care about their union. They're willing to give up their jobs. I mean, they don't care what happens. It's this kind of defiance that's irrational and petulant. And I'm still trying to figure out where this cult mentality has grabbed these people, because like you said, these are people I've known for years. These are people that I've worked with who, you thought there was something going on there.
I have had people literally tell me that they would give up their pension. I've had a guy tell me that if Trump takes our pensions, that's just for the good of the country. Now, I don't know how you survive on that. I mean, I just don't.
Yeah.
And that was a guy I worked with in the Bureau of Prisons for over 20 years.
Yeah, and look, he's also going to destroy Social Security. So if he takes the pension, destroys Social Security, what are people going to live on? And this is the thing that bothers me the most is as someone who pays attention to this, because with the passing of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, we're going to get another corporatist on the court. You're going to see the end of workers' rights, of women's rights, of civil rights, immigrant rights. You're going to see the end of all of that and take us back to the days of the Lochner era, where if you were hungry enough and desperate enough to work for poverty wages in desperate conditions, well, Phil, that was your choice. It was your liberty.
The liberty. It's like I was watching some of this go on. The questions I have, they went after a piece of our pension the last 3 years. They tried to eliminate we have an early retirement supplemental for law enforcement officers. So if you have to retire at 57, you have no choice in federal service. So when you retire, the Office of Personnel Management, you get a payment on top of your annuity. And that gets you to your Social Security age. And then you start drawing Social Security. Last 3 years, his budget has attempted to take that payment out, even for current retirees. And when you talk to our members, and it's frustrating, but you explain this, you show it to them in writing. Oh, no, he wouldn't do that.
He wouldn't do that.
He wouldn't do that. and you sit there and you go, no, he did it. It's here. The Democrats in the Senate have stopped it every year the last 3 years. And of course, with the House Democratic majority, they wouldn't even allow it into their bill. So it didn't get in. And Toomey actually voted for this in the budget. And I showed some of them that, and they were like, oh, no, this must have been a mistake. There's just no way. And now you have the deferment of Social Security taxes for the next 3 months. So people are like, oh, well, that's not a bad thing. I get 6.25% more in my check. You're going to pay 12 and a half, 13% in January to pay it back. And nobody seems to be focused on that. They look at this short term and they don't think anything about the long term.
Yeah, and not to mention, as the actuary of Social Security said, if they do make this permanent, by the end of next year, the Social Security Disability Fund will go broke. And by the end of 2023, Social Security itself will go broke, which means, Granny, if you're collecting Social Security right now, sometime in 2023, if Trump gets reelected and gets his way, you're going back to being the Walmart greeter or putting the red light out or something.
Well, and our members are the ones that basically run that system, the SSA system. And so, you're right. Social Security disability it's a huge issue. I mean, you have parents out here that depend on those payments, for their kids who have issues like that, and for medical care and all these other things. And you just wonder what is going through a lot of our folks and a lot of our members. Why aren't you listening to what is really happening here? You can say all day long, "Oh, I'm not doing anything to you." But the facts are there if you want to go find them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that hard to look them up.
No, but here's the thing, and this is where I think Trump has done an incredible job of convincing us that there are no facts. If he doesn't say it, my grandfather always used to have a saying: "If I don't know it, it ain't worth knowing." If he doesn't believe it, it's not worth believing. This is what Trump's got the country believing, that if it doesn't come out of his mouth on a certain day, because tomorrow it's probably going to be different, it doesn't exist. This idea of alternative facts and alternative realities. I think you've got people who have this belief, this cult-like belief that once someone says to me, "Rick, I believe," conversation's over. You can't fight with "I believe."
No, and it doesn't matter what you have in writing. It doesn't matter what they attempted to pass in the House or what they attempted to pass in the Senate. His own written budgets, his own written memorandums. He wiped us. He harmed a lot of labor representatives and employees when he did 3 executive orders in the federal system to basically eliminate a lot of what we do to represent employees. And now employees, they're frustrated with the union. Well, I need a rep. Well, those people weren't available. He took them all off of release time. There's no availability of a rep. And so now I have 4 staff that work for me across Pennsylvania and Delaware to try to rep people if they can out of 55 local unions, 16,000 people.
Wow.
You know, it is, we built through the 1978 Civil Service Reform Act a voluntary union system in the federal government where we get release time, duty time to do representational work. And that has been the norm since 1978. And he came in and wiped it out with 3 executive orders, and people were going, where's my, what's my union doing? And then when you go to talk about politics, well, I can't vote for Biden. Why would I vote for Biden? I said, well, to get rid of those 3 executive orders. Well, I don't know. I'm gonna have to think about it. Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting, and I'm not saying all members. I mean, we did a survey. We had 23% of our members in a poll that wanted us to endorse Trump. Now, we have a lot of law enforcement. We've got a lot of DOD people. I get it, but even that in the certain parts of the country, including the center of our state, it is tough sledding. It really is.
No, absolutely. And I'm in the center of the state where I'm talking to those union members who, trying to explain, especially in the private sector. Obviously, your members are in the public sector, where Trump made it a right to work nation, by putting Neil Gorsuch on the court, and that decision that came down in the Janus decision, which harmed unions all across this country. But in the private sector, the NLRB has been doing nothing but diminishing the power of workers to organize, narrowing the scope of being able to picket, even so far as, and I tell stewards this all the time, taking your ability away to vigorously defend someone. Now the standard is grievance meetings have to be respectful. So you can't raise your voice. You can't use an off-color word. Look, when I was a steward, I can't tell you how many times I said, come on, this is BS and you know it. That now is a fireable offense. So how are you going to vigorously defend someone when this is the new standard? And I don't think union members understand how much the pendulum has swung. And I don't think average everyday workers actually understand how taking this power away from unions filters down to them as well.
Well, I don't think it's going to be too late. The problem is they're not into the nuts and bolts of that part of the union. They pay their dues. They go to work. In the private sector, I was private sector. I was in the Steelworkers Union for a while. I was in UFCW. You pay your dues. You go to work. You don't really see anybody unless something's really going on, or if you're going to go on strike. Something like that's going to happen, but they don't see the nuts and bolts. And so the NLRB stuff, this stuff with robust debate, we have a thing called robust debate in the federal sector where you could get excited and pretty nasty in a union meeting with management and get away with it. But now with the NLRB ruling, we feel the FLRA, the Federal Labor Relations Authority, which also has Trump appointees on it, will be trying to take that from us. And the line member who we are trying to reach out to in this election really doesn't focus on those nuts and bolts. I get it. You're busy, you got kids in school, you're doing your thing. Us who have taken the role on as union people, as union leadership, or as union stewards, we're the ones having to deal with these restrictions and nuts and bolts. I mean, even Scabby the Rat, for instance, we don't want that to be put up at a picket anymore. Now, how many places in New York City, or you go to a big city and you go out to a picket, Scabby the Rat's there, right? No, not anymore. The NLRB says that's not appropriate. And so you just have to, I don't know. We try one-on-ones. We're trying to reach our members. We're trying to, union mail will be next. We're phone banking. My union has made over 17,000 calls to members. We're working on that, and hey, it's one vote at a time right now.
Yeah, because Pennsylvania, obviously you being from Pennsylvania as well, this is the Keystone State of this election, because all eyes are on here, because, like I said earlier, the 538 blog has said that, if Biden wins Pennsylvania, it's like a 96% chance he's going to be president. If Trump wins Pennsylvania, it's like an 86% chance he's going to be president. So this is an important state, especially it's one that, Trump only won by 44,000 votes. So as you're talking to these members, because look, I think a lot of people are uncomfortable putting the ballot in the mail. I think people are going to be even more uncomfortable about going to the polls. What are you telling your members on how maybe they should consider voting in this election? Because look, I'm sure you saw it as well. They're going to chuck ballots if they're not in the secret envelope. So we're going to lose a whole bunch there. If the signatures don't match, who knows what happens there? If it's a check instead of a circle, who knows what happens when this stuff starts getting in the courts? I think it's going to make Florida look like like a walk in the park in 2000. But I'm curious your thoughts.
Well, as we've looked at it, I mean, it's really an individual decision on whether you're willing to go to your polling place. My wife and I actually had this conversation today. We voted by mail in the primary. We felt that was the best way to go, and we went with the mail-in voting in Pennsylvania. We've decided we're going to go to the polls November 3rd and vote in person, but that's a personal choice. Now, our members, we are trying to explain the election law, the new law, Act 77, to them, which is they can take that up to the county elections office and drop it off, by hand if they don't want to put it in the mail. Maybe at that point, that election official can make sure that ballot is good. You can also, I think Philadelphia today announced that they're going to have 17 places where you can go in, get your ballot, fill it out, and turn it right back in right there. That will be a plus, I think, to voting. And I think that should be everywhere. I also think that from now, they started voting, or we're supposed to start getting ballots on the 14th. You should be able to go into your elections office, get a ballot, fill it out, give it back to them, and have it count. They have your registration. They know, they have all the stuff that would be in the book at your precinct. They have it there. They should be able to do that. And I hope that out of all of this, that happens.
I'm right there with you. So last line of questioning I've got for you, because, obviously this is, they say, the most important election. As always, give me the elevator argument that you're giving to your members, to the general public. Why Biden over Trump? Why do you think Biden's the guy?
Well, one thing I think is we've just got to bring normalcy back to the White House. It's just not normal to wake up at 3 a.m. in the morning and text crazy stuff all morning long, spend 20 hours watching a TV show, tweeting about it. This is the president of the United States. Now, I don't expect that with a Biden presidency. I also expect him to put people in charge of government and agencies that will run them appropriately, that understand what government's supposed to do. And I'm not talking about left or right here. We had George W. Bush. We had George Bush Sr. I worked in all those administrations. They picked people that were involved in public service, and they ran the agencies. You got to have someone that knows what to do with the VA. Got to have someone to know what to do with SSA, DOD. And unfortunately, we don't have that right now.
No. Yeah, for me, that's the point right there. I want competent people. I want people who know what they're doing, and I want a functional government. And like you said, I want to forget who the president is for a day or two. It's that simple.
Don't you, Rick?
But Phil, I appreciate the time. It's always good talking with you, buddy. Thanks so much.
Hey, thank you. Have a good night.
Good stuff. Our good friend Phil Glover, National Vice President for AFGE District 3. Gonna take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You listen to the Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1969. President Richard Milhous Nixon issued the Philadelphia Plan.
The goal of the plan was to require building trades unions to admit black members into their ranks. Nixon believed this would show him as a civil rights supporter without having to give in to the more radical demands of the civil rights movement. Affirmative action opponents sued to kill the plan, but they were unsuccessful. Prior to the introduction of the Philadelphia Plan, construction unions nationwide were almost exclusively white. Throughout the 1960s, black workers organized to demand access in construction trades in many northern cities. In Philadelphia in 1967, black workers protested to integrate construction work. This led to federal attention and Nixon's plan. The plan required 6 Philadelphia building trades to create numerical goals for integrating their locals. They had to meet those goals to get federal contracts. Many white construction workers nationwide opposed the plan. Construction workers in Pittsburgh and Chicago held protest rallies. In practice, Nixon had very little interest in strong enforcement of his plan. He wanted to use it to defend himself when critics attacked his administration's civil rights record. Civil rights leaders saw through Nixon's charade. Real progress in desegregating construction work was very slow, and the Nixon administration did little to change that. Still, Nixon's plan was a step, however small, at integrating the building trades. Another important step was the founding of the Coalition of Black Trade Unionists in September of 1972 in Chicago. Today, the organization has members in more than 1,200 locals and works to increase and support black members of trade unions. Today, integration of the trades remains an incomplete project.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Welcome back to the
For millions of people around the globe, especially young people, the pressing issue of our time is this: the world is on fire. On fire with climate change, creating a new and intensifying norm of deadly weather extremes that make a dystopian future a distinct possibility. Constant wildfires, rising seas, desertification, global crop failures, widespread hunger, water shortages, etc. Luckily, we are a sentient species with the scientific ability to know that the chief cause of this global destruction is not angry gods, but us, specifically humankind's massive extraction and burning of oil, gas, coal, and other fossil fuels. So there's a rising chorus of people shouting, "Fire!" And sure enough, our national government is rushing to the scene to put it out. Unfortunately, our president and his crew of right-wing fire breathers in Congress are not directing the government's hoses at the corporate extractors, but at us, the people, scientists, environmentalists, and other activists who've dared to point to the flames and call for global action to stop the conflagration. They seem to think the problem will go away if they can make the protesters go away. Worse, they're fanning the flames by turning the EPA into the PPA, the Polluters Protection Agency. They're slashing dozens of public restraints on the polluters while also opening up our oceans and wilderness areas to their polluting greed and stalling the rational shift to a green energy future. This is Jim Hightower saying the good news is that the people are revolting, in the very best sense of that term, revolting against our corrupt leaders' rush toward climate catastrophe. Our hope is not in leaders, but ourselves, as it has been throughout American history. From the Boston Tea Party forward, creative and gutsy public protest has been democracy's best friend.
Hightower's commentaries are brought to you by the Hightower Lowdown, the monthly newsletter with Hightower's take on what Wall Street and Washington are up to. For information, visit hightowerlowdown.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So interestingly enough, I've had a number of charter school advocates pointing their anger in my direction because, look, I'm not a charter school advocate. I think it's a destruction of the public school system. If you want good schools, we should be fully funding neighborhood schools. We should be in control of our schools. They shouldn't be used for profit motives. They shouldn't be used to generate income. And look, when you see these big moneyed interests giving huge campaign contributions to politicians to continue to push this stuff, you got to kind of wonder, what's the payoff? Because clearly it's not benefiting our kids. and here to share some thoughts on charter schools and the broken promises of the charter schools. I've asked Carol Burris to come talk with us. She's executive director of the Network for Public Education. They've got a new report out, the broken promises, an analysis of charter schools closures from 1999 to today. Carol, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, like I said, I've been getting a lot of these charter people who are, like charter Nazis almost. It's, we have to have choice. We have to have choice. And I'm going, I'll tell you, education is one of those things. I don't necessarily need choice. I would like one really great option. How's that? How about we work towards that?
Well, I agree. I mean, I think everybody's first option would be an excellent neighborhood school, right? The school where your child can walk to, where they feel safe, where it's well funded, where there are the services that they need. And the problem, of course, with all of the choices, the more choice you have, the less likely you are to have a well-funded neighborhood school because the money goes with all of the options. And our latest study, I think, is really fascinating because what we show is that, even if you may find what you think is your dream charter school, the chances of it being around but by the time your child finishes, say the 5th grade or the 6th grade, are really not that good. There is an impermanence there, and charter school advocates seem to think that's A-okay. But most parents, when they're looking for a school, they're hoping that when their child enrolls in the school, they're going to graduate from that school. And that is not necessarily the case, we found.
Now, you hear the capitalists who love to say, no, we need competition. Come on, Carol, we need competition. we need schools competing against each other because that's the best outcome. And what we know is, in the business community, businesses fail at an alarming rate in the first 3 to 5 years. And interestingly enough, so do charter schools.
Yeah, they do. And, it's a very different scenario that, when you go down the street and the pizza place closes, but, here in New York City, okay, well, you walk another 2 blocks and there's another one. The world doesn't end. But that's very different for a child. When they walk to school one morning and there's a notice on the door saying that, the next day their charter school is shutting down. And that happens. Doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen, whether it's in the middle of the year or it's the end of the year and you're looking to go back and the school closes. And it doesn't, there's just some places where that model, the competitive business model, doesn't work. And charter schools are one of them. And I mean, what we did was, we had always wondered, Rick, what is the failure rate for charter schools? The charter school lobby, what they will say is they'll say, okay, well, we have 5,000 charter schools, and last year 500 failed, right? Or 300 failed. But that's not the failure rate because there's this constant churn. So, they're counting in the number of charter schools the ones that maybe opened up 6 months before. So we said, well, the way to look at it really is like the way we look at graduation rates, right? You have a cohort of kids. They start 9th grade. How many of them graduate in 4 years? How many of them graduate in 5 years, in 6 years? I mean, that's the way to really see what the failure rate is.
Right.
So that's what we did. I mean, I worked with this amazing researcher, Ryan Flegger. He is a doctor in this stuff. I mean, he's just amazing. And I stepped back because everybody, they were all sure on the charter school side that I'm always cooking the books, right? And I'm like, you know what? I'm not even going to put my hands in this research, even though I've always been meticulous and honest. I'm turning this over to somebody else. And what Ryan found just blew the both of us away. I mean, we found that just in the first 3 years when charter schools opened, so we looked at all the schools in the year they opened, and then we looked 3 years later, right? Are they still open? And we found that in those first 3 years, we looked at 17 cohorts, 17 different groups that started in a particular year beginning in 1998. And what we found was that 18% of those schools closed by the 3-year mark. They were gone. And most of those failures were in the first year. Then we went out to the 5-year mark, and all of a sudden it was 1 in 4 charter schools. By year 10, 40% of them are gone. And at year 15, 1 in 2 charter schools are gone. They don't even make it to the 15th year. So, following them and following them long term. And then, there weren't that many that had been around beyond that 15-year mark, but the failure rate creeps up. It's just a little bit slower.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, from a state like Pennsylvania, that's the Wild West of charter schools, and we've heard every bizarre story you can imagine. From charter school by day, nightclub by night.
Yes,
yeah, you got people literally dancing on the desks at midnight. Which is just bizarre to me, but this is the kind of thing that happens, and I don't know how that's conducive. Now, these are the brick and mortar charter schools. How bad did you look at how bad it is for the cyber charters? Because here in Pennsylvania, we've got a bunch of them, and from what I understand, most of them are horrible, and none of them, and it's my understanding, none of them have made AYP, which is average yearly progress. So did you look at that? Because, with COVID and with, schools now shutting back down and opening up, a lot of people are looking for the online option. How did these cyber charters work out?
Well, the cyber charters were included. We did all charter schools, whether they were brick and mortar or cyber charters, and the cyber charters didn't have better survival rates than the others. In fact, they were, slightly worse. They just churned through, but the biggest problem with the cyber charters, more than anything else, is that, they get terrible results. Kids do not do well. They don't. They never have. They never will.
Right. Which is why I'm against the idea of the online learning. I mean, look, we've got to do it for now, but as soon as we can safely get back into the classroom, I think that's when people learn best, and we need to be pushing for that.
Yeah, and, and all they do is they manage to suck a lot of money out of the system. And what you see with the cyber charters, more than the brick and mortar charters, are more for-profit charter schools. And I hate to use the term for-profit because it's deceptive. Only Arizona allows for-profit charter schools. But what you have in Pennsylvania and in most states that have charter schools are charter schools. They're nonprofits, but really what they are fronts for-profit organizations, right? So they start up a nonprofit, given a nice little name, School of the Future, Arts Academy, right? There's always Academy of Excellence. And then what's really happening, though, is that all of the money is going to the for-profit enterprise, be it K-12 or be it Connections Academy or a homegrown for-profit charter school in the state. So there's the school, but the school then takes all of the money that they're getting per pupil, and they're just passing it on to the for-profit that's hiring the teachers, doing the curriculum, and doing everything. And poor kids, and we showed it by looking at 3 very, very poor cities. They get screwed the worst.
Yeah, and they're the ones who they think they have something, because I've talked to a number of people who live in poverty areas, and they're like, hey, the charter schools, that it's all we've got. We've got to hold on to this. And I'm going, but you realize it's not as good, and the studies have shown not as good, and actually in a lot of cases worse. They've been sold that this is their choice. This is all they've got, and as studies like yours point out and others. It's really almost it's a giant grift, man. And you're talking about the curriculum, you're talking about the teachers and the for-profit companies that deal with that. That's not even talking about the janitorial service or any of the services that go into that. They have sweetheart contracts and the land deals and the buildings that they end up being able to get because and the massive tax breaks that they're able to funnel their way. I mean, it's a giant ripoff. And
it is.
And they couch it in terms of, but we have choice.
Yeah. Well, you know what? In a lot of places, they're not going to have choice. Take this Chester Upland District, which is in Pennsylvania. I mean, you have a for-profit charter operator essentially taking over that district. So over about 60% of the kids in that district now go to charter schools. The money has just been drained from the public system. Then they brought in recently a new superintendent who loves charter schools, who were like, well, it's no problem. Charter or public, they're all the same. And now you have a judge that, oh, excuse me, I think my phone might be ready to die. I'm so sorry. And now you have a judge who essentially is starting to turn over the public schools to charter operators to allow them to run the schools. So it's a serious problem. And one of the things that we did was we tracked enrollment. We said that a school was open when we first saw enrollment in the Common Core data, and a school was closed when the enrollment disappeared. And that was, I think, the best way you could look at openings and closing. Then we started adding up, well, how many kids are actually displaced by all of these closures? So we took the enrollment in the last year of the school before it closed, and over 867,000 kids have been displaced.
Wow. Now let me ask you, if you're looking at on a socioeconomic scale, where do those kids fall? Because look, a lot of suburbs, you don't have charter schools in my neighborhood. There are not a lot of charter schools in the good addresses. Our wealth class doesn't have a lot of charter schools in their neighborhoods. Who's affected by these charter schools? Where predominantly on that socioeconomic scale do they fall?
Oh, well, absolutely. They're more in low-income areas, and where we found in the big cities that we looked at, it was in the poorest neighborhoods that you had the most charter school failures. I mean, we used census data, track data, and we showed that in areas of high poverty, that was where the charter schools were most likely to fail.
Yeah, it's scary. I mean, whenever I think of charters, or especially cyber charters, I think of the Frontier Virtual Cyber Charter School in Philadelphia that had 52 students who were supposed to get laptops and internet and I think a scanner and a printer so that they could actually do their work. None of them got the equipment they needed, and yet somehow they all logged on for classes, and we were paying that for a long time. Now, some people I think actually went to jail over that, but how many of those kids, a year or two down the road, didn't get the education that they were supposed to get, and what happened to their lives, and how much did it cost to remediate all of that? It's just a bad idea. It's grift. It's just, to me, just a horrible thing. So last question I've got for you, in looking at this moment, where do you go with this? Because, as I said, the reality is what they've done is they've turned this into a giant ripoff. And look, I hope folks will take a look at the Network for Public Education's most recent study, Broken Promises, an analysis of charter school closures from '99 forward. Like I said, I think it's a giant ripoff. Love to hear your thoughts. And charter folks, feel free to send angry emails. Rick@thericksmithshow.com. Gonna take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. Right back after this.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1935. That was the day the United Rubber Workers Union was founded in Akron, Ohio. Akron was the rubber capital of the world. All the major companies were there: Goodyear, Firestone, Goodrich, and General Tire. In Akron alone, there were more than 40,000 rubber workers and thousands more throughout the country. After 30 years of struggling to build the union, hopes of organizing the industry were finally made real. The founding of the International came after a successful strike the year before. But the union was born amid growing tensions within the AFL. These were the years of industrial organizing that rivaled the exclusive skilled craft unions. Growing demands to organize the mass industries would explode the next month at the historic AFL convention in Atlantic City. The tensions between AFL leaders and rubber workers delegates gave a taste of things to come. At the founding convention, rubber workers delegates opposed a number of AFL leaders' demands. The AFL insisted on appointing officers. They threatened to withdraw financial assistance when the delegates demanded democratic elections. but AFL leaders backed off when unionists from across the city protested. Then, delegates voted down an AFL constitutional clause proposal to bar communists from the union. They also refused AFL orders to organize on anything less than a total industry basis. Organizing skilled workers into the United Rubber Workers became a contentious issue at the October AFL convention. It led to the fistfight between Carpenters leader Bill Hutchison and Mine Workers president John Lewis, which precipitated the AFL split. By the following spring, the new United Rubber Workers Union would lead another successful strike that put it firmly among the industrial unions of the CIO.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So you remember yesterday we were talking about the Civil app, where if your neighbors are desperate and you're desperate, you can go get a job kicking them out of their houses. Remember that? It's just literally disgraceful. I mean, I'm just... we're in this weird world where, now you've got all these app-based jobs where, you can go on, cut grass, you can go on to do all kinds of things. There are apps for everything. There are these kind of employment apps that have jumped up. And the premise is that you're your own boss. You get to choose when you work and who you work for and all of that. And you're an independent contractor. That's how these places make their money. They find you jobs. They take a commission off of it. So you're basically working for them. But you're also working for yourself. On some level, I completely understand that. I have done it myself in the past. I've done a number of odd jobs over the years. The question then comes, when is an independent contractor an independent contractor, and when are they actually an employee? You look at Uber and Lyft, the state of California said, look, these are jobs. You're working for this company. You've signed a contract with this company. You are doing their work. When does a guy who's splicing cable for the phone company, when's a guy who's working on the lines for the phone company, when's he an employee and when is he an independent contractor? A truck driver who leases the truck from the company, told when to pick up, where to pick up, how to pick up, where to take, how to drop off, when to get there, where's the uniform? Should they be considered independent contractors or are they employees? Well, our National Labor Relations Board and our Labor Department, they are fiddling with the independent contractor status. And understand what the whole independent contractor status is. It really is, in the grand scheme of things, a way to really steal from working people. In fact, one of the studies I saw said that, the abuse of the independent contractor, you're talking about at the minimum $500 million a year in lost wages. That's not including all of the Social Security payments, not the unemployment payments, the workers' compensation payments, the local taxes, all that's not that at all, just in wages. Because you stop and think about it. I pay you $500 to do a certain job, and it takes you 50 hours to do that job. You could possibly work for less than minimum wage, and there's nothing that says you can't. Whereas if you were an employee, you did that job 50 hours, you'd get 10 hours overtime. You're making less money. And that's what this is really about. It's about shifting the burden from the company to the quote-unquote independent contractor or the employee. And we're in this moment where a lot of people are stuck in this gig economy kind of scenario where, as we talked yesterday with Elaine Olin, who pointed out, said, look, I talk to Uber drivers and Lyft drivers all the time, and none of them say they need the money. Oh, I'm just bored and I needed something to do. I needed a reason to get out of the house. Oh, I really love it. It's not about the money, which I don't know about you, but I work to make a living. That's it. If I didn't need the money, I'd be doing something else. So when I look at this moment, we've got a Trump National Labor Relations Board and a Trump Labor Department headed up by a guy who was basically a Walmart lawyer. And they are fiddling with the independent contractor rules, swinging the pendulum again to the side of power and money and away from the side of people and workers. And if this proposed rule goes forward, we will see more people ruled as independent contractors and thus being in a situation where they're shouldering the burden. And look, I've been talking about this for years. As somebody who spent the mass of my working life in the trucking industry, I watched it happen firsthand as these workers were, basically kicked out of jobs. And then, you want to lease your truck? We'll let you lease it from us, and we'll pay you by the load, not by the mile, not by the hour. You get paid by the load. So, however long it takes you to get there, it takes you to get there. If something breaks, that's on you, buddy. You got to not only sit and wait out the time, but you got to fix the trucks that you lease. So if you blow a tire, that's a minimum $500. That's cheap. That's on you. And I've been talking about this for years, going, this is a giant ripoff. But people have been bought into, I'm going to be my own boss. I'm going to set my own hours. I'm going to do my own thing. Yet, talk to any independent truck driver. They tell you where to go and when to get there and you better be at the other end at a certain time. And there are some companies that, like I said, make you wear their uniform, make you adorn your truck and your trailer with their logos, but yet you're still your own boss. And thus, Social Security doesn't get paid into, Medicare doesn't get paid into, unemployment insurance doesn't get paid into, workers' compensation doesn't get paid into. You got to cover all that stuff yourself. And heaven forbid you get hurt on the job. There's nothing for you. You better have private insurance to cover you, because guess what? That lease payment for your truck still due. So you can't work, they come repossess it. There goes your job. But you're your own boss. You're an independent contractor. And I look at what's going on in California right now, because you remember California passed AB 5 to deal with this, to end the independent contractor loophole and say, look, Uber, Lyft, you got to hire these people. These are workers. These people work for your company. They do the essential task of your business. Well, there's Proposition 22, I believe the number is now, that they're saying is the most expensive ballot initiative in California's history. Evidently, and this is one of those, you go, holy wow. As of September 16th, there has been $192 million. $192 million spent on this ballot initiative. You don't think the Ubers and the Lyfts and these people don't see, they're going to spend this kind of money? You don't think they're going to see that there's profit on the other side for them, the payoff on the other side? And what it really is all about? It's about cheating those workers out of their wages. And it's more than just that industry. We're moving towards a time when it's going to be all industries. If you think you're immune, you're not. It's going to be all of us at some point. Every job, they're going to figure out how to, well, you can be your own boss, come and go as you please, except when we tell you to be here. And now the labor board is swinging that pendulum a little bit further, making it a little bit easier, making the definitions a little harder to force them to hire you as an employee. And as this pendulum continues to swing in the side of capital and away from labor, the side of power and money away from the working class, this is what we're going to get stuck with. And, I've had people say, well, go find another job. Good luck doing that when they're all doing it. It's like this forced arbitration stuff that they've put into employment contracts. I've had people say, well, I wouldn't sign it. And I say, well, you better check. You probably already did. Because everybody's doing it. There's no getting away from it. You know, when I talk to truck drivers who work in the ports, all the ports are doing it. So where are you going to work when they're all doing it? Which is why we need to have laws to protect workers. And going back to what Phil Glover said a couple minutes ago, you talk to working people who don't get this. We're sucked in by the cult of personality. We're sucked in by, as Helene Olin said yesterday, Trump's charisma. We're sucked in by the entertainment, the carnival barker. We're sucked in by the spectacle. We're sucked in by it's fun to listen to him be a buffoon. It's fun to be ugly this or sleepy that or stupid this. It's childish fun. It's playground stuff. And for a couple minutes, we forget how miserable our lives have been and how hard we're working to make ends meet. And we get to blame someone, we get to hate, we get to do all those things and not feel guilty about it. Until you realize that everything that this administration is doing is making your life worse, is making it harder and harder and harder to get by because of things like this. And you don't realize it until it smacks you right smack dab in the face. As I said earlier, I've been talking to a lot of union members who are saying, I don't care. I don't care what they do. I don't care if they let the pensions go down, because I've been saying, look, Teamsters, Biden has said he's going to sign the Butch-Lewis Act, which is going to save multi-employer pension funds across this country that have been devastated by decades of union busting and decades of Wall Street just robbing us blind. There's an opportunity to save our pensions. A little bit of a bailout for working people, if you will. Trump's never going to sign it. The Republicans are never going to push it. Why would you vote for them? Because I bought the flag. Scary times. Scary times. I'd love to hear your thoughts, though. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back. Stick around.
Waving the flag of freedom for people, not corporations. Rick Smith.
We have gone through the typical alphabet, and we are now fully into the Greek alphabet. So this record-breaking season continues.
Tropical storm Beta breaks century-old record as it grinds into storm-weary Gulf Coast. Smoke from record wildfires in the West is causing another public health crisis. Plus,
I respect all of my colleagues and genuinely like most of them.
The loss of trailblazing Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg is a loss for the environment.
All of those losses and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Yesterday, Joe Biden was endorsed by Scientific American. I assume because of all the horrible things Trump has said about science and America.
Correct. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, is it just me, or are we getting hit by, one or two hurricanes or tropical storms every damn week right now?
It's pretty much like that.
Yep.
And we are not done with this historic 2020 Atlantic hurricane season, driven by man-made global warming of the oceans. First, post-tropical storm Teddy is about to hit Nova Scotia, and we've used up the English letters in the storm naming system and are now onto the Greek alphabet for only the second time on record. The first time was in the blockbuster 2005 season.
Ah, yes, Hurricane Katrina.
On Friday, 3 tropical storms formed in just 6 hours. That's only happened one time before on record. The first 2 Greek-named storms, Alpha and Beta, have developed more than a month earlier than in the 2005 season. Very slow-moving tropical storm Beta could bring a foot of rain and intense flooding to weary coastal areas as it crawls along the coast of Texas to Louisiana. Beta is the 9th tropical storm or hurricane to hit the U.S. mainland mainland in a single season. There are more than 2 months to go until hurricane season ends on November 30th. So late season storms could impact the last day to vote on November 3rd. So please make your voting plan now.
What do they do when they run out of Greek alphabet letters?
I don't think that's ever happened before, so I don't think anyone knows.
Well, buckle up. Just saying.
In the western wildfires, NASA satellite photos show the massive smoke plume from the West Coast fires is so large that it is interacting with the hurricane systems on the Gulf Coast and the East Coast. One firefighter has died battling the unprecedented blazes. In California alone, nearly 8,000 fires have consumed more than 3.4 million acres and claimed 26 lives, 9 in Oregon. Reuters reports smoke from the U.S. has reached Europe, and the smoke is compounding the coronavirus health crisis by pushing air pollution in the Pacific Northwest to record levels. Seattle has converted some coronavirus-dedicated facilities into clean air shelters to provide safe havens from the smoke. And health experts are warning of the potential for long-term damage to the developing lungs of children.
You know, if America gets any greater, I'm not sure we can stand it.
And it's not just in the West, of course. The New York Times reports that other countries are also experiencing record wildfires in 2020. Siberia, Indonesia, Brazil, Argentina, and of course the worst bushfire season on record in Australia in January. Scientists say that human-caused climate change plays a significant role in the fires. Major conflagrations are now at least 30% more likely than they would have been in a world without global warming. In an interview with CBS, Columbia University bioclimatologist Park Williams explains that, yes, fires and droughts are getting worse because of rising global temperatures.
We're seeing an acceleration of forest fire because of climate change, because as you warm the atmosphere, then forest fire responds non-linearly, meaning that every degree of warming actually causes more forest fire than the previous degree of warming.
Finally, Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who passed away on Friday, had a distinctive and nuanced environmental legacy. She established broad interpretations of the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, and other major pollution laws. Justice Ginsburg wrote the landmark Laidlaw opinion in 2000 that established broad standing for people to sue polluters without having to prove direct injury. She helped establish the legal foundation of current and future federal climate regulations by upholding the authority of the Environmental Protection Agency to regulate greenhouse gas emissions. Senate Republican Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has shamelessly reversed his previous position from 2016 and now pledges to ram through a new Trump nominee, ensuring a right-wing supermajority on the court that could cement Trump's rollbacks of Obama-era pollution and emission standards and could strike down any future climate legislation. This is a high-stakes battle that will reshape America and our ability to address the climate crisis for decades to come.
A lot of battles. It's getting tough out there for the planet, for mankind, and for this country, for sure. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, please check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find, follow, and share us planet-wide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
I actually found this most recent poll a little bit shocking. I got to be honest, a little shocked by the numbers that came out of the people who trust Donald Trump or the CDC. The most recent Axios Ipsos poll comes out and says 51% of Republicans prefer Trump over the CDC. 36% prefer the CDC, which I got to tell you, I thought would be higher, considering that 97% of Democrats say they choose the CDC over Trump. 1% of Democrats choose Trump, and I got to think that 1%, I got to think they're trolling. Overall, 70% of the country, and this gives me hope. I got to tell you, this gives me hope. 70% of the likely voters respond to the poll saying they trust the CDC scientists over Donald Trump, while 21%, and I would think those are the crazy 21%, choose Trump. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the top stories of the day and all of the insanity going on, our good friend Bob Ney, former congressman and political analyst. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
In an insane world, it's good to be talking to you. You're sane. So.
I appreciate it. Before we get into all the other stuff, how you feeling? I know you had a little medical thing today. Feeling well?
Yes, thanks for asking. I put out a message on Facebook in which I would, to your listeners also, I had, we didn't have the elective procedures because of the coronavirus. So once that ended, I went to a dermatologist. Anyway, bottom line, 3 biopsies, 2 okay, 1 not with basal cell carcinoma cancer. And it was the one, of course, in the middle of my forehead. It couldn't have been in the one on my leg, So anyway, went in today and had it removed. And just my message here is, look, sunscreen. I was a kid. We ran around and burnt all day long. And so get regular checkups if you can. And that's why we need preventative medicine, and we need medical care for everybody.
Yeah, tell my kids that. They got to wear their sunscreen. Their mother's on them all the time.
Oh, yes.
Wear the sunscreen.
Absolutely.
And also, and I don't mean to bring up bad news or bad memories, but there is that one picture of you in Scotland, really red-faced.
That might have been the one, but I think actually when I was a kid, I got more burnt.
Is that possible?
That picture led to a disaster. I think so.
Yeah, that picture. I didn't want to bring up bad memories, but to me, I'm going, that's probably where it came from.
Yes, it might have.
All
yes,
right.
sir.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear things are well. I wanted to make sure that
Thanks.
that I got that in. Let's talk about the CDC. Are you surprised by those numbers? That so many people, because I got to tell you, I was a little surprised. Only 21% of Republicans sided with Trump over the CDC.
Well, I was a little bit surprised on the Republican side. Now, the Democratic side went pretty well down the line,
right.
Obviously with the CDC versus Trump, which I think by this point they would go with anybody that, has a medical degree versus, Trump, because a lot of people do pay attention to Dr. Fauci on the Democratic side to what he says, But, yes, on the Republican side, I thought it would be a little bit more. It's 51%, as you said, of the Republicans, while 36% chose the CDC scientists. So I thought it'd be a little bit heavier. Really did.
I did too. But then again, you go, that's the heavy 36. Those are the unmovables. Those are the people, no matter what, that he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and he could botch a response to the virus and they'd still be on his side.
Right, and they're with him. And then the amount that listens to the CDC, it'll depend as time goes, maybe not before the election, but if the CDC comes out and makes a few changes, that always makes people skeptical. But again, in this whole business of the coronavirus, you hear one thing, then you hear another from the scientists. Now, when the president speaks, it's a whole different world of what you hear.
No, I mean, and I got to tell you, I think this kind of disinformation that we're getting out of this administration and the kind of all over the place, the CDC comes out and says, yes, it's airborne, and yes, it'll last for longer than a little bit, and then they take it down, and there's all this back and forth. I got to tell you, not good.
Well, it's disturbing. I mean, we've had it happen here in Ohio. Governor DeWine, I think, tries his best to, come out and give facts, but every once in a while, something changes with the health department, something changes how they look at a stat, and people say, oh, there you go, you see. So, I mean, there's going to be all of this debate on it. I think when it started with Trump and the people he had there on the press conferences, to be frank with you, I think it started out okay. I really do. But then it turned into a war of words of Trump against his own people, as usual.
Yeah.
And then that caused a lot of problems. And then if you throw in the CDC and anything changes from what they said, because this is not an exact science, then people say, oh, you see, that's skeptical too. So
yeah, I mean, for me, there's a bit of common sense, and you go, and I know common sense isn't common anymore, but like any virus, like anything, it is airborne for a bit of time. You do walk into it, you get it on you. Maybe social distancing is the way to go. Wear the damn mask. Seems like common sense to me. I don't know why, as a society, we're still fighting this. It just seems so simple.
Well, in our families, my father's 97. Could not get him out of the house or near anyone for a month. I mean, no one. And now he'll go over to my sister's. We'll be on a patio. There's social distancing from, any of the kids to come. So it's okay. At first, though, it was a whole different world. It was as if the virus traveled, a mile and a half in the air. And I think things changed, for people then. But again, it's common sense with the mask and some distancing. I also throw in the Walmart factor there. I hear this all the time. Oh, it was okay to run through Walmart when this started, which kind of has a little bit of a ring to it. Walmart was kind of exempt, and well, then how come we can't be somewhere else? How come we can't have more people in a church or something? I call it the Walmart example.
No, you're absolutely right. I hear it 1,000 times a day as I'm talking to people about, because here in Pennsylvania they've ruled that we can do the mail-in ballot. So I've been talking to voters about, do you want the mail-in ballot? And Trump supporters to a T. It's like they got the memo on exactly what you said. If I can go to Walmart, I can go to the polls. Right. And it's like it's their only talking point.
Right. It's the Walmart factor.
And I'm like, you can't come up with something else? You can't come up with, if I can go for ice cream or something, you can't come up with something different?
Right, exactly.
Now, we're also finding out now that Dr. Birx is a little distressed by the direction of the task force that she's no longer being the center of. And there's some talk that she may be leaving.
That's possible. I mean, I think she's been, very credible. And I know that she has argued different times within the White House. We've had reports, on that. But she's a scientist by nature, and I guess that hey, if it doesn't go amongst the way it should with science, maybe she will just leave.
Yeah, it's crazy. Now let's get into your world of expertise. Obviously the battle over who's going to replace Ruth Bader Ginsburg is heating up. I don't know if you saw today, but House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy evidently threatened that he's going to introduce a motion to kick Nancy Pelosi out of the speakership. How would that work?
Well, it doesn't. The speakership is voted upon, and unless something happens of a major criminal indictment, etc., which would force anybody to step aside, but not even step out, by the way. But he can't do it. I mean, you don't impeach a speaker, and you don't remove them because you don't like what they do.
Yeah,
this is just chest thumping.
Yeah, I read this and I saw the story and I'm going, explain to me how, because I want to now figure this out. Because if he, as the minority leader, can throw her out, how can Schumer then do the same thing in the Senate?
Right. I mean, and he can't. They can't. They can't throw it out. Chuck Schumer doesn't say that he's going to, throw out Mitch McConnell. He might say he's going to defeat him at the polls.
Yeah, I mean, he might knock him out, but he can't throw him out of the seat. And this is one of those things that just made me kind of chuckle, because I know there are people out there going, "See, he's going to stand up to Nancy. If she gets too out of hand, he's going to throw her out of there."
Can't. It can't be done. Now, and I don't even know that it's worth what he did. Number one, because there are people, Republicans, that would say, "Well, okay, you didn't do it. Why did you tell me you were going to do it?" First of all, I mean, the diehards would say, "You didn't do it. Shame on you. We're not going to help you now." And then some of the Republicans say, "You can't do it, so what are you telling me?" I just think it was a waste of effort. And also the media giving attention to something that they know can't happen, I think it's a little ridiculous.
See, I brought it up because I think it's hysterical. These are the people who are running our government, Bob.
No, I mean the mainstream media in the first place.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good thing to bring up because it is hysterical. It can't be done. Anybody knows that. And to even go, I mean, to say, hey, we're going to after her, we're going to make sure we turn the House over, and then she's not Speaker anymore, and you get rid of her, America. Take that tone if he wants. But to do something that they absolutely is physically impossible to do, legally impossible to do, why even say it?
Yeah, why even say it? No,
that makes sense.
Obviously it was a threat because in his mind he may think that the arrows in the quiver that Nancy talked about was possibly impeaching Trump a second time. I don't see that happening. Curious your thoughts.
Yes, I mean, That's the other thing. The House right now, with 40-some days left, on the Democratic side, don't use the word impeachment. Don't, just let it go. Let the process go. Worry about keeping the House from their point of view on the Democratic side. I would not bring up the I word at all, because that's not going to happen either.
So do you think the amount of time left? Do you think this is him throwing it out there to put it in the minds of his minions, of his supporters, that she's considering impeachment, so that pops up there where she never would?
Well, yes. If she says the word impeachment at any point in time, if I were he, I would grasp on it and say, you see, there they go again. Yeah. They just don't want me in. They're going to try to cheat at the ballot box. They're going to try to cheat at the mailbox. And now they can't get their way, so they're going to try to impeach me again before the election. And then you say, but, all of you yelling about this stopped her. That's the second, in a fundraising letter.
Yeah, no, look, I'm getting fundraising letters like crazy.
Oh, sure. Right.
They're nonstop. Hey, you send me money, we're going to get the most conservative justice ever. You're going to get it anyway. There's no stopping it.
Correct. That's right.
Unless you can think of something, because if they did impeach him again, would that slow it down?
No.
No, of course not.
He would love Donald Trump and the Trump campaign, and if I was running the Trump campaign, I would beg that they start an impeachment process. I would beg them to do it, because that will then contain all the air in the system, all the headlines, all the political vacuum will be contained in one thing, and that will be the issue about Donald Trump. I mean, Joe Biden won't even exist for the next 40 days if they do that.
Yeah. No, because he doesn't exist much anyway.
Well, yeah, he's getting out a little bit more, but you're right. He is having trouble because of so many things going on. The Supreme Court, decision. Now that we know Romney's not going to, follow with consistency, then this is going to dominate the airways, which Trump won't mind, because that is less time for Biden. Yeah. I mean, as I look at some of the news, and I really try to be fair about this to the stations I do, and I put Biden stuff in, I put Trump stuff in, but as I look at the news, it's tough. You got to really start to search of what the news is putting out about Biden. They throw a few bones here and there, but they're mainly just completely obsessed, of course, with the Supreme Court.
No, I mean, this is and Trump. I mean, because it's easy. It's right there in front of you. It's the train wreck. It's it's the accident on the highway that you can't take your eyes off of.
Well, and also, as the press reports on things or contradictions, it's even on CNN. It's not making necessarily the top headline anymore. CNN will talk today, for example, about Trump refusing to commit to a peaceful transition, but all of the fact-checking, there's not even room for that anymore. You don't even hardly see it.
Yeah, it's crazy. I wanted to get your thoughts on this piece of legislation that Democrats are pushing in the House. It's called Protecting Our Democracy Act. It would criminalize corrupt pardons, outlaw presidential pardons, and prevent the president or vice president from using public office to run out the clock on the statute of limitations. Is obviously not going to become the law, obviously not going to make it through the Senate. It's not even going to sit on Mitch McConnell's desk. I'm sure he'll circular file it immediately. Is this worth going after, or is this something you see worthy of some time?
No, the speaker put it out there because of the president's, pardoning people before they even get into the system, which usually you do a little jail time before that happens. And she's put all these reforms in the bill to get, it'll be introduced with the Chairman Adam Schiff and Jerry Nadler, the two chairs of the committee, et cetera. And they'll have some Trump headlines on this about what Trump has done. And then it'll do some guidelines about preventing the abuse of the pardon power, and then it would have the Department of Justice to intervene and provide materials to Congress about any pardon, et cetera, and then to ensure no president's above the law, and it goes on and on. Now, it's okay to put this out and say, look, we want to reform. It's going nowhere. It won't go anywhere. I'm frankly not sure if you grab Biden and asked him if he wanted this, whether he would completely support it, taking away presidential flexibilities as much as we like it or don't. Look, I can't stand a guy named Mark Rich. Bill Clinton pardoned him. I didn't like it. I can't say that there was a bunch of Obama people that I didn't like, but, you can pick here and there. I think Bush did a couple I didn't care for, and Trump. But I'm not sure that, you can really get down to how you pick, who you don't like or who you do like about it.
Yeah, well, the last thing I got to get to, the first debate, less than a week away. Are you finding it as amusing as I am that you had Trump coming out and saying, I think the language he used, Biden's a seasoned debater, if I'm getting that right. Kind of setting the bar a little higher, while all he's been doing so far this whole campaign is, saying that he's Sleepy Joe and he's on drugs and, he's senile. Which is it? Is he a skilled, seasoned debater, or is he a senile old man?
Well, this is interesting when you see this type of tone taken by Trump, because Trump would be normally saying he's the worst debater in American history and, on and on and on. And I think what's happened here is they do have a concern that Biden may overperform and Trump may, underperform. Now, it's true, Joe Biden hasn't sat down for a lot of tough interviews lately. Look, I mean, we have to recognize that, right? But that doesn't mean that Biden will be hammered to death by Trump and just sit there and take it. I mean, Biden's been around a long time. But I think what you're seeing there is the White House trying to take the expectations down a little bit. That way, if Trump does a home run, fine. If he doesn't, there's a couple more debates left.
Yeah. I got to tell you, I saw that, and I'm thinking he blinked.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
It shows that internally they have a bit of fear. Look, Biden's ahead nationally. Here's the bottom line. You know this, I know this. Pennsylvania, Florida, Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin. I mean, we know what's out there. In the Carolinas, of course, we know what's out there. And those numbers will tighten a bit. And so for, key states, that it's a big deal. And I just think that, I think they blinked a bit. I think they're showing for the first time a bit of fear about, quote, Sleepy Joe may have been revived a little bit.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where you go, Trump's not going to prepare. He's going to do no prep.
Right.
So you don't know what you get. You don't know what winging it looks like against him. The other debate, the vice presidential debate, and I got to let you go here, but the vice presidential debate, do you find it as funny as I do that Mike Pence is being played by Pete Buttigieg in prepping Kamala Harris?
Yeah, I saw that, and I'm wondering, I thought Pete Buttigieg was a great candidate, but I would think just because he doesn't have a legal background, he was a military guy, but I would think they would pick somebody very, very seasoned. I would get a former prosecutor that served in Congress, Gowdy. I'd have Gowdy, wouldn't you?
Well, if I'm Pence, yeah, most certainly. Yeah. I wouldn't have Scott Walker. Because that's who's prepping Pence is Scott Walker, but
right.
Buttigieg is doing Kamala Harris.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and I don't know. I think they could pick different people. Kamala Harris is going to be exceptionally overperforming in this against Pence. Yeah, she will.
No, that's what I'm hoping for. I want to see a public thrashing.
Yeah, but I saw that about Buttigieg. Yes.
I just hope she doesn't.
Thought it was strange.
I can't remember the guy who was running for vice president with Hillary's name. He's a senator from Virginia. He was that forgettable.
Isn't that terrible? Keene.
See how it went? So forgettable. Anyway, Bob, I appreciate the time as always.
You, Rick.
Good stuff, my friend.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Seriously, I mean, it's one of those things where you look at it and you go, you could have picked somebody better than Scott Walker to prep. And as I said when the story came out, is Scott Walker going to be in blackface with a dress on, which I think would be hysterical. And if he did wear the dress, if Scott Walker did wear the dress, would Mother then have to be in the room for that too? Just kind of wondering. But I'll tell you, the debates are going to be quite entertaining. I'm looking forward to next week's presidential debate because I think Trump did blink. I think it was a blink. I think he's worried that the same old that shtick isn't going to work. And it's now a man that he's going to have to do it to. You know what would be, because I was thinking about this. You know what would be great if he tried some of the stuff if Trump tried some of the stuff that he did to Hillary on Biden, and Biden just popped him right in the nose. I would love that. It's not going to happen, of course, but I would love that. It just is what it is. But yeah, we're going to be taking those days off of the debates because clearly I want to see them live instead of having to watch them the next day. And I want to encourage everyone else to watch them as well because I think they're going to be really important. I think they're going to make or break whoever the next president is. And as we've been saying, I think Trump knows. I think Trump knows it's not going to be the same walk in the park. Anyway, if you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast. The Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Tomorrow on the big program, our good friend Paul Segunda is going to be here to share some thoughts on RBG and the Supreme Court. We're going to talk about transit. Yes, we need some transit. And, of course, our good friend Sarah Burris back to give us the raw story. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show.